This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Hey, it's my pleasure to welcome back a returning guest, a good friend of mine, and that is attorney Garrett Sutton. He is a Rich Dad advisor. He has written several great books. The one that might be of most interest to you listeners is Loopholes of Real Estate. Garrett, welcome back. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Great to be here, Jason.
It's good to have you. So we were talking a little bit before we started today, and there are some interesting new things. We want to talk at least about series LLCs for asset protection and estate planning purposes. And I know what you think about those. We'll dive into that. There's some interesting, I guess, new law out on the issue of taxation of a trust. And then California, they're always up to no good. Probably a couple other things. So where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with the two U.S. Supreme Court cases. Two cases just came out, and, everybody complains that the court is divided, conservative and liberal, but these two cases, Jason, were 8-0, were unanimous cases. Mm-hmm. And the first one is Timbs versus Indiana. And this deals with the Eighth Amendment, which bars excessive civil forfeitures. And that's where the police take your money and don't give it back. Mm-hmm. And this has been happening around the country. For example, in Las Vegas, the Metro Police Department took in $1.9 million from people. They arrested, they found cash, they took the cash, and half of all these cases involved $1,000 or less, which means it's not worth it to hire an attorney to try and get your money back. And so what happens is the charges are dropped, but the police keep the money. Wow. And this is called policing for profit. Yeah. And it's become a problem around the country. Oh, yeah. And so in the Timbs case, Tyson Timbs pleads guilty to selling heroin. All right? Okay. So he pleads guilty. And the penalty for that is $10,000. All right. Well, instead of accepting $10,000, the state went after his Land Rover, which is worth $42,000. Mm-hmm. So instead of getting $10,000, they get a $40,000 car. And, give credit to Mr. Timbs and his lawyers. They fought this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Indiana Supreme Court said, well, federal law doesn't apply to our state law, which I hate seeing. Of course, federal law, the Constitution, applies to state law. Yeah. The U.S. Supreme Court said the federal government and the state government cannot engage in excessive civil forfeitures. And so this is a great case that is going to help stop these police departments from taking people's money and not giving it back.
Garrett, I have long said that police are just modern tax collectors nowadays. They have militarized. They have military weapons now. So that's another topic, but it's scary in many ways. But they have basically deputized police as tax collectors. And they do this through the form of tickets, citations, DUIs, whatever, all under the guise of public safety and protecting us. They do the same thing with gun control laws, of course. Much of it is legitimate. But there is a line when it just becomes a for-profit enterprise. I mean, you go to some of these cities and clearly you can see that the business of parking citations is a hugely profitable business. One of my friends in Arizona fought against these unconstitutional speeding and red light cameras and discovered all sorts of abuses where these companies basically would get into business with governments And everybody was profiting, and the citizens were getting absolutely screwed.
And you know what they did there? They sped up the yellow lights.
Right. They made them
Instead
shorter,
of having
in other
8
words.
seconds,
Yeah.
they'd switch it to 4 seconds,
Right.
and everybody would be guilty.
Because they could give more tickets. But also,
Right.
they're actually endangering people by making
Right.
the yellow light shorter.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, it's like the Watergate informant Deep Throat said, follow the money. It's always about follow the money, which is
Right.
sad, really. But on the forfeiture thing, why should everybody listening be that concerned about it? I mean, look, nobody listening is selling heroin, hopefully. Everybody's law-abiding citizens, at least for the most part. Should we really care? Like, does this really
Yes.
matter? Tell us why.
Yes. So there was a case in Humboldt County, which is in the middle of Nevada, and this fellow is driving through the county on Highway 50, loneliest highway in the world, and he gets pulled over by the Humboldt County sheriffs. And he has done nothing wrong. He doesn't have a tail light out. He's done nothing wrong.
No probable cause, in other words.
No
Okay.
probable cause. Yeah. And he happens to have $10,000 in cash in his car. Well,
and if he had $9,999, they'd accuse him of structuring.
I don't know. I think they would have taken it.
But because he had 10,000.
Anyway, so he's got cash in his car that he won in a Reno casino, and he's driving back to Salt Lake City.
Okay.
What's wrong with transporting cash in your car?
Across state
lines? The
lines?
Humboldt County detectives took it.
Okay.
He was not selling heroin. He was not doing drugs. He was just an innocent civilian driving across the state of Nevada, and the deputies took his money.
Okay.
And so this can happen to anyone, Jason.
Well, are you saying they illegally took his money, or they
Yes.
they did it under a seizure rule?
They seized it based on suspicion of a crime,
Oh my God.
the transporting of cash, and they assumed that he was involved in some sort of criminal activity because he had so much cash on him. And this was a very big case in this area. The Humboldt paper has been writing about this for quite a while because the Humboldt County Sheriff Department is taking this money, keeping it, buying staff cars, paying bonuses. It's very wrong. And so citizens need to be aware of this and push back against it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Push back hard. That is absolutely ridiculous. So that's one thing. Would you say we are winning or losing that battle at the moment?
The fact it was unanimous by the U.S. Supreme Court, I think that's a big win.
Okay, good. Good for the people. Remember the old saying, folks, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. If you want the citizen to be big, you better make sure the government stays small.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay, what's next on the agenda?
We have another unanimous Supreme Court decision that you'll like, Jason, and that is the Kasner case. And what happened was the Kasner family set up a trust in New York. And a couple of the beneficiaries, some of the Kasner kids, moved to North Carolina. The trust was continued. The money stayed in the trust. There was income there, but it didn't flow to the beneficiaries in North Carolina.
In other words, they didn't take any distribution from the trust.
They didn't take any distributions. However, the state of North Carolina, in an attempt to collect as much money as they can, said to tax the trust, rather the Kasner kids, $1 million. And so the trustee paid it, but then went to court to say, look, the people in North Carolina did not receive this money. There should be no tax on any of this. And it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and in another unanimous decision, the Supreme Court said a state can't tax a trust solely because the beneficiary lives in the state. And that's going to be great for those people living in California.
It will,
a Nevada Asset Protection Trust.
Right. Very good. Okay, so let's just drill down on that a little bit. So the concept is they've got this trust. It's established in the state of New York.
Correct.
Some of the kids who are beneficiaries to that trust move to North Carolina. North Carolina has a state income tax, probably around 5%, I'm guessing. But the interesting thing about it is that the taxes in New York are higher. Now, if they tax the trust, maybe they didn't tax the trust in New York, and we'll get to that, but If they taxed it in New York already, then you definitely wouldn't have to pay twice in North Carolina, because you could say to North Carolina, look, we paid the tax in New York, and then the two states would have to argue over who's entitled to the tax. This is all kind of hypothetical, but that's conceptually, I think, the way it works, right?
Right. But in this case, the New York tax didn't come up in the Supreme Court case. They focused on the lack of contacts between the North Carolina beneficiaries and the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
The trust had no activities in the state of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The trustee was in New York. All the investing took place in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so North Carolina had no connection to the New York Trust. And in tax law, it's called nexus. There's no connection for North Carolina to tax an activity that's occurring in New York.
Right. North Carolina was really butting in where it doesn't belong in that case. Now, if they had taken money out of the trust and they were North Carolina residents, if they'd taken a distribution from the trust, North Carolina would rightfully be entitled to tax, probably, right?
Clearly, that's taxable.
Yeah.
They are North Carolina residents. They've received income to them in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina certainly has the ability to tax that income.
Yeah, but in this case, they didn't even take any money out of the trust, and North Carolina says, hey, we're entitled to tax.
Right.
They had no activity in that state, and they didn't take any money into that state either. So, very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, anything else you want to tell us about either of those cases?
No, just, again, the fact that they're unanimous. So all this bellyaching that we have a divided Supreme Court, there are cases where the justices all agree.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this Indiana case on excessive civil forfeiture is important, and the Kaesner case is another important one. And again, they were unanimous verdicts.
Yeah, that's good. So good for the people on both of those. And you Californians listening, I know we have a lot of you from my former home state. This is very significant to you because a lot of you might have a trust that you set up in, say, Nevada, where Garrett's located, or in some other state or even country, but that's a whole different thing when it's different countries. But say it's in another state. California has an infamous history of doing things just like North Carolina did in that example. And because of that Supreme Court decision, California probably wouldn't get away with that, would they?
Correct. Doesn't mean they wouldn't try.
Yeah.
But
the long arm of the franchise tax board.
Right. Well, and what happens, Jason, is the California Franchise Tax Board will come up with some aggressive tax collection scheme, and like in the Timms case in Indiana, someone will be, good enough to stand up and say, no, you can't do this, and the Franchise Tax Board will then stop. But in the meantime, Jason, they've collected $100 million or more in taxes, and people are entitled to get a refund, but no one ever files for that.
Right.
So, California has gotten away with the extra collection of $100 million or more with this blatantly improper taxation, and it just goes on and on. I've talked to a state senator in California about how they do things, and he goes, if you're going to live in California, you just got to pay to play.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a lot of money here, but you got to put up with the Franchise Tax Board, and so that's kind of the prevailing attitude among the government and the tax collectors.
And let me tell you, the Franchise Tax Board in California is vicious. Now, I've never gotten into any fights with them, but I tell you, I hear really ugly stories about the Franchise Tax Board in California. When a state is desperate for money, they'll do anything they need to do to get it. So you want to be careful of that. It has amazed me, and I really kind of predicted this before I even heard any examples of it. I said that California would build an economic Berlin Wall around the state for people who try to leave. And I can't think of the examples of how they've done that. Now, I have heard of some of those examples. I said this, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I've heard of examples over the years. I can't remember them, but it's interesting. Folks, remember the Berlin Wall was built to stop the brain drain. Everybody was leaving East Berlin because They didn't want to be part of the Soviet Union, right? They didn't want to be living under communism. They didn't feel that that would be the best for their life and their spirit and their innovation and so forth. It wouldn't be rewarded. So they just started leaving like crazy. And in one weekend, the Berlin Wall was erected to stop the brain drain because the evil communists, they can't incentivize people to stay. They have to force them to stay. And we all know the rest of the story, sadly. If you ever get the chance, I remember the first time I was in Berlin back in the 90s. I've been there several times since. I spent 6 hours in the Checkpoint Charlie Museum, and literally tears came to my eyes at times reading the exhibits and reading the literature in there. It's just unbelievable. But they do this stuff economically too. Obviously, they're not going to get away with imprisoning people.
Let's provide the context for it. Here's the context. California, the San Francisco Chronicle, to their credit, had to go to court to force the California pension system to reveal their finances. And it was revealed that they are $1 trillion underfunded.
Yikes.
Meaning they've promised X, they've collected Y, and the difference is $1 trillion. How can a state make up?
That's a trillion with a T. That's not a billion with a B. That's a trillion with a T.
And so you have this state bureaucracy that knows that their pensions are being affected, and they are trying to collect as much money as they can. It's really incredible what they do. The Wall Street Journal looked at the California Franchise Tax Board, and their term for how this government agency worked was lawless taxation.
Yeah. That's what it is. If you're still in my former home state and you're listening to this, what I have said for many years is, look, I know you can't do this tomorrow. It's not something you do, but just start planning. Start getting your mind focused on the idea, assuming you want to and you agree with me. Maybe you think it's worth it to pay the freight and live in California. I paid it for years, and at some point I just felt it wasn't worth it anymore. And I left in 2011. So make a plan that's maybe your 5-year plan to move to a state with low or no taxes. You'll find that the cost of living is much lower. The environment is better. People are less stressed out because they're not so burdened by the cost of living and the cost of taxation. It's just better, in my opinion. So put your mind in that direction. You can always come back to California and vacation for one day less than 6 months, and you should be okay.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of reasons to live in California. It's a nice place to live, but the quality of life in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles is decreasing.
Oh, decreasing is an understatement. It's pretty bad. Yeah. But there are certainly some nice areas. Look, I lived in Newport Beach and La Jolla. Those areas are very nice. Let's talk a little bit about just any of the lessons from your great books, any other strategies you want to share with people in general or any other sort of current events. Whatever, take it wherever you want, Garrett.
At the top, we mentioned series LLCs. I'm not a fan of them. I've written about them in the book Loopholes of Real Estate. But we kind of have a new development, Jason, and that is banks, when they're loaning to series LLCs, and just briefly, the concept of the series LLCs, you have one entity, and then you have a duplex in Series 1 and a fourplex in Series 2, and so you don't have to set up two separate LLCs. You have the series LLC owning two separate properties, and the idea is there's this internal shield of liability so that a claim brought against the duplex doesn't affect the fourplex, as if there were two separate LLCs. We don't have any cases on that, which is one of the reasons I don't like it. But what we're seeing now is banks, when they loan to a series LLC, are trying to be able to get the equity in not only the property they're lending on, the duplex, but they're trying to get collateral on the fourplex, which is a separate property. And so you have to be very careful on the documentation. If you're using a series LLC, you won't be using our firm because we don't set them up. But if you are using a series LLC, just be careful that the bank is not getting security over the two properties when you intended for it just to be a loan on the first property, the duplex, for example. So that's something that people need to be aware of.
Yeah. Some people might have been confused by the way you said that, because you said the duplex and the fourplex, like they own two properties, they're in a series. It might be better to just use a bunch of single-family homes. Say you have a series LLC and you've got 10 single-family homes. So you make what's called a child series. Okay. Think of it like an organizational chart in a company, for example, or the military, right? You've got this one series LLC at the top, and then below it, you've got 10 things under it, the child series, right?
Right.
And when you do that, you've got this, in your example, the duplex in one, you got another property that's a fourplex, and that's in another of the child series, and you borrow against one property in one of the series, and the bank says to you, look, we're not just going to allow this child of the series to be liable for the debt. We want to make the entire parent, I guess. Forgive me if I'm using the wrong words, Garrett. Just correct
you're
me.
right. Yeah,
the entire parent.
Yeah,
liable.
Provide collateral.
Yeah,
and
right.
liable.
Right. I don't blame the lender for saying that. I would do the same thing, but it's not good for the borrower who might believe that they have the firewall between the child, right? Each child in the series.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be, you may not even know what's happening. They just, the loan docs are presented to you in the name of the parent.
Right.
Series LLC, which gives the bank access to the equity in all of the child series. So you just have to be really careful on that.
Be careful also, listeners, because there are a lot of promoters out there promoting various entity formation ideas and schemes. And, a lot of this advice is just bogus. I mean, it really is. It's sinful.
Laughable.
It is laughable. And you can really see right through it. We had a presenter speak at one of our Venture Alliance meetings about series LLCs. And I liked the idea. I did not set one up. I don't have one, but I was very interested, and I kind of got cold feet because I couldn't believe, and he may well be right, this may be completely accurate, that you don't need a separate bank account for each child in the series. He said,
really?
He was saying, I know, I thought this is too easy. It can't be this easy, right? That's what I thought. He was saying it's just an accounting entry, that it's this child versus that child, one bank account. And I thought, there is no way, if there was ever a judgment against one of those children in the series, it'd be one bank account and one tax ID number that they would levy. They'd get it all. Right?
Correct. And we don't have any case law saying that is accurate. All right? So we're going into a new field.
Right.
And these series LLCs are fairly new, and we don't have a lot of case law fleshing out the terms and conditions. And I just don't like to be a pioneer. I don't want to put my clients in a situation where I don't know the answer. And with these series LLCs, we don't know all the answers.
Yeah. Well, there's a riddle about that. How do you know who the pioneers are?
The ones with the arrow shirts?
No, the ones with the arrows in their back. Yeah. Those are the pioneers. So you don't want to be a pioneer, yeah. And he was kind of making the argument that he likes the fact that there's not lots of case law. Because with a regular LLC, there is case law. And sometimes the veil gets pierced for various reasons. I don't know. I didn't really buy his argument, but
case law is your friend.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As long as it's favorable, definitely. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Well, just that, we're following Nevada and Wyoming. Wyoming is making some big changes to make it easier to protect your digital Bitcoin assets.
Oh, interesting.
So
for
maybe
cryptocurrency.
as we flesh it out, we should talk about it further. I'm not all up to speed, but Wyoming has passed a number of laws. They're in the lead when it comes to states that are going after Bitcoin business and being able to protect Bitcoin assets.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
Wyoming wants to be known as a crypto-friendly state, I guess.
It is. That's true.
Yeah, very interesting. Good stuff. Well, Garrett Sutton, thank you for joining us. Give out your website.
It's corporatedirect.com, and if you call the office, we provide a free 15-minute consult with a incorporating specialist to see if we can help you. And so that number is 800-600-1760.
Garrett Sutton, thanks again for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.